So hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for tuning in. If this is your first time listening to one of our podcasts, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. We really appreciate you spending the time and coming in here and listening. So this episode, we're going into another episode of our series really on college planning. You know, this is something that I'm very passionate about. I'm going through personally right now with my oldest being in college, my youngest coming afterwards. And I know how the process can be. I know the process was for me, really, maybe having better ideas about some of these planning items but for those parents that don't, it can be really, really daunting and almost scary. And so we're trying to help out and give some guidance and some direction, bringing in experts in different areas to really help and through this process and provide some nuggets for you out there. So this episode is really going to be on the savings for college. Okay, we're going to have another episode that talks about getting into college. We had an expert there on helping taking tests and courses and applications. We're going to have another episode talking about paying for college, going through that process. But this one is really savings. And really the focus is going to be on, I'm not going to say the only tool that you should use in your college savings, but it really should be your primary tool. It's a 529 plan. And we're going to talk a lot about what the savings side of it and the prepaid plans. And we have our guests, I'll introduce them in a moment, really unique product that they offer. Now, there absolutely are other ways to save for college, right? In a regular taxable account. Some people will do it through insurance products, which, are pros and cons to that. And I'm happy to discuss those with anybody who might be interested. Just reach out and we can go through those. But here I really want to focus on 529 plans. And my guest for this episode, and he can introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself and his the plan that he represents, is Jonathan Sparling. Jonathan, thanks a lot for joining us.
Well, thank you, Steve. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about 529s and a little bit about our specific plan.
Yeah, wonderful. So, Jonathan, I guess let's start out and let's tell the audience, a little bit about 529 plans in general. And there's a couple types, of those. What are the two? You guys, I consider you the third. What are the various options in the 529 universe?
Yeah. So, and as you mentioned to kick off, 529s when it comes to saving for college really are kind of the ideal path, and not the only one, but certainly one that offers a lot of benefits for families. So with 529s, there are two basic types. So there's 529 savings plans, also sometimes called 529 investment plans, and 529 prepaid plans. And then our plan, the private college 529 plan, is a prepaid plan, but falls under the prepaid category. So with 529 savings or investment plans, you are contributing post-tax dollars into a savings vehicle. And really the goal of 529 plans are to help families save for college expenses. And so these plans, many states, all 40 or 49 states, except for Wyoming, have their own 529 plan that's offered through the state. And you make contributions on however frequent of a basis that you want. And your funds, you choose an investment option. Usually there's less options when compared to a traditional investment plan. And you can make contributions throughout the year. Those contributions grow tax deferred, and the withdrawals are tax-free as long as they're used for qualified education expenses. And so when folks think about 529 plans and saving for college, that's really what they're thinking about, are those 529 savings plans, where you're, again, kind of choosing your options or working with a financial planner to choose. Now, the other major type are 529 prepaid plans. Now, these are a bit different. With prepaid plans, what you're doing is you are, as the name implies, essentially prepaying tuition expenses. And they come within prepaid plans. They're typically offered in one of two types. So 529 prepaid contract plans. And so with a contract plan, you're saying, okay, I want to save for 1 year of college, 2 years of college, 4 years of college in the future. And depending on the plan, you are, and the age of your child, you're essentially, it's going to be an amount that you have to contribute will be determined by the prepaid plan. The other kind of type within that is a unit plan, where you're essentially locking in a certain percentage, or you're purchasing certain units at today's rates to be used for future expenses. So if you kind of think about them, compare and contrast, those 529 savings plans, those investment plans, you're more exposed to the market because you're choosing the investment option, or again, working with a financial planner. With prepaid plans, you're taking some of the risk out of it, because you're saying, all right, I'm going to lock in at today's rates, or I'm going to pay for future expenses, but it's essentially going to be something that I'm doing over the course of time. And I don't really need to worry as much about the fluctuations in the market.
Yeah, that's a great summary, Jonathan. Thanks for that. And I'll tell people, those listening, if you are in a state that's a state income tax, if you are in one, move to Florida, or actually don't move to Florida. We have too many people coming here. Florida does not. But if you are in a state that has a state income tax, there may be some tax benefits by using the actual 529 plan sponsored by your state. And as Jonathan said, these plans, since they're state sponsored, they're limited to the investments that are in there. It's really no different than a 401k plan, right? If you're at your employer, you have a 401k plan, you're very limited, into those options. So if you are in a state that has a state income tax, you may have a benefit to investing in the 529 that is sponsored by your state. If you are not, you really have the availability to go anywhere, right? And if you have a particular fund company that you use, or that your advisor likes, you're able to freely go to whatever plan to go to. For all our clients, we put them in the Virginia plan, because that's the investment options that we like the best that are out there. And so, yeah, I mean, Jonathan, as you said, the difference between the two plans are the savings, the investment risk taken by the client versus a prepaid. And we can go through some different rules other than that. So, Jonathan, basically, how many states out there offer these prepaid tuition plans? I think that's what you're saying. Yeah. The majority of them are like, you're going to buy a year of college, 2 years of college, whatever it might be. Whereas yours will go through your plan and talks about, giving you a certain amount of units. How many states out there have these prepaid plans?
Yeah. So what's interesting about the prepaids is they used to be offered by more states. And so it was an option that was much more widely available, and states themselves were, because they are the sponsors, were kind of administering these plans. Mm-hmm. Currently, there's 10 states that offer prepaid plans. And so with the prepaid plans, typically you are saving for colleges, universities within that state. And so that's mm-hmm. what you're saving towards. Now, there are options where you can use some of that money outside of those states, right? In terms of like a redemption or taking out. Or an outside of the network, and so you're not going to be losing your money. But there are less and less states that offer those. One interesting point to know is that in the state of Massachusetts, the prepaid plan is technically not a 529 plan, although it acts very similar to that plan, to 529, the structure of it. And with that particular plan, you can actually save for some private colleges. But for all of the other states that offer prepaid plans, you're really saving for those state, or you're prepaying the in-state tuition at public colleges and universities. And so there are limited options with the states offering that. And for all of those states, or for many of those states, there is a residency requirement. So either the person opening the account owner, or the beneficiary, or both, have to be a resident of the state in order to open the plan.
Yeah, I'll give you a story down here. Florida is actually one of the states that offers a prepaid. And back in the early 2000s, we got in there for my kids. They're kind of that age. But then after the great financial crisis, Florida came back and they shut down new entrants for the prepaid for a short period of time. And then they up and almost more than tripled the cost, almost quadrupled the cost for the prepaid plan in the near future after that, because they took on all the investment risk. They weren't not, whether, listen, they're not alone, right? Everyone got their pants caught with their pants down a little bit in the late 2010s. But so they repriced it, and it really became almost not a really good deal at that point. It became much expensive, and over time they've worked through it to where they've gotten a price that's probably pretty fair and pretty accurate about what it would cost for those 4 years. So, I think there's that aspect of it to the public ones that once you get in, you might not have to pay right away, but you, like you said, you have that contracted price and it'll get you that amount. So. Yeah, so we had those two plans traditionally, and then now, or not now, it's for a while, we've had the prepaid CollegeWell, the prepaid private school. So tell us about what you guys are, how long you've been around, and kind of how you work, because I think it's a very, very unique opportunity that not many people know about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, so as you mentioned, our plan is, it's kind of unique in the space. And so Private College 529 plan is a prepaid plan. And so, we talked about the two options. This falls under the prepaid category. What makes our plan unique, and we've been around for almost 20 years, or actually for 20 years now, we're in our 20th year, is the plan itself is actually sponsored by and was founded by private colleges and universities. So back in the late 90s, private colleges came together, a group, and they said, we want to create this savings vehicle that would allow families to save specifically for private colleges and universities. And so we could recruit some members to it. Those members would agree to essentially assume the risk that come with prepaid plans. It would be just for private colleges, and it would be available nationwide. So our plan is a federally authorized 529 plan. So we adhere to the same 529 rules as everyone else. But what makes the plan unique is that, number one, we're working with just private colleges. So we have close to 300 private colleges within our plan. And they're across the nation, large research institutions, small liberal arts, and kind of everything in between. And so those, we call them our member colleges. Those are the schools that agree to essentially allow you to prepay for tuition at their institution. The other thing is that because we are nationwide, there's obviously no state residency requirement. So really anyone can save in our plan, which makes it pretty flexible in terms of kind of who can come in and who can save in the plan. And so really how it works is much like other prepaid plans. When you open an account with us, you are saving at the current rate, and your contributions, you're saving at the current rate of tuition and mandatory fees. And so you're locking in a percentage of tuition and fees based on the rates today. And, one of the questions we always get is, okay, you got close to 300, do I have to choose which school I want to save for? And the answer is no. So by the nature of opening an account and making contributions, you are saving at all close to 300 schools in the plan, and any that may join in the future, which is another nice, unique feature for family saving. And then essentially you save throughout multiple years, much like you would in other 529 plans. And every year that you save, we call it our plan year, you are locking in at whatever tuition and fee rate is available, or whatever those stated rates are for all of the schools. Fast forward 8-10 years down the road, and your child chooses to go to one of the member colleges in the plan. What you will get from a prepayment or from a locked-in value is going to be your contributions throughout the year, or what you've saved throughout the year, and that redeemable value, you're going to get that same percentage of what you locked in at tuition when they go to that college. So just to kind of conceptualize and give a real quick example, let's say you opened an account and you contributed $10,000, right? So that $10,000 is going to lock in a different percentage at every school in our plan because they all cost different. So at a school that costs $40,000, you've locked in 25% of a year, right? Because 10,000 you've locked in. So you've purchased 25% of 1 year of tuition and fees. And it's going to be calculated differently for every school. If you never made another contribution in the plan, fast forward 10 years and your child goes to that college, it now costs $60,000. Well, when you go to redeem your prepaid tuition, you still get a value of 25% of 1 year. So your 10,000 has now turned into 15,000. And so that's essentially, your return. Now, what's great about the plan is that because you can make contributions over multiple years, you're going to see that savings really add up. And because you're not choosing which institutions you save for, you save at all of them, you can really see when you're in your account, okay, this amount has saved me this many numbers of years of tuition and fees at this school, I've locked in this many at this school, and so on and so forth. And so, the plan is really unique. And if someone is thinking about private college, maybe private college in the future, they went to private college, kind of have strong aspirations for their families, for their children, it really is a great savings opportunity for you to consider.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really unique. Those units and that money going in, and you're saying you get that credit for these different schools that are out there. And we'll put in the show notes here. We'll put a link out to you guys, and we'll put to the list of all the participating colleges. And like you said, colleges, colleges in the future that may join, and that you'd be. How does that work? If so, I've looked at the list. University of Miami down here is on it, right? So that's a big one. But I went to Oglethorpe University, right? And let's say they're not on the plan, and let's say in a few years down the road they come in. How does that look? How does my past credits potentially go towards that school?
It's a great question, and it's one of the unique things about the plan as well. So we're adding new schools really kind of consistently. We brought on Georgetown a few years ago, University of Denver, Wentworth Institute of Technology come to mind. And so when a new school comes on, one of the criteria is that they provide us their historical tuition and fee rates going back to the start of the plan, which is 2003. And so let's say someone was saving or they opened an account and they started saving in 2010. When Georgetown or those other schools joined, Georgetown joined in 2020. We had University of Denver join in 2022. Because they provide us their historical tuition and fees, essentially overnight, because you're saving at every school, the family who had an account open back in 2010 would have automatically locked in a percentage of tuition and fees at Georgetown when they came in for that year. And then if they contributed in 2011, 2012, so on and so forth. And so even if you're new to the plan, right? So it's obviously, you're like, it's not going to help me if I haven't opened an account, right? But think about it now. If you opened an account now, 2023, you start saving. If we add a couple schools, 3 years later, you would essentially have bought or locked in at their tuition and fee rates as well when you open the plan. So it's another great benefit, and it's really motivation for us on the plan side to bring in more schools to just increase the options and the saving options for families.
Right. That's wonderful. And so I think it's a really, really cool thing. And I'll talk a little bit, the prepaid. I think a prepaid plan is a really good idea for a family that just wants kind of like a fixed amount, and to say, hey, listen, I'm paying for this and this is going for college and my child's going to have that. Anything above and beyond that, hey, child, you worry about it, right? That's kind of, I've seen many families like that. Whereas the more savings one is where the family that's want to have more flexibility and potentially it can commit potentially more resources to it. That's the savings plan might be a good option for them. So in the Florida prepaid, Jonathan, when you put that money in, if your child ends up not using it, you basically get back whatever you put in, right? Whatever that contract was, they send you back your contracted value. How does that work with you guys? Let's say the kid gets scholarships to the level that they don't need to use it, or maybe there's even some credits left over at the end. How does that work?
Yeah, so for kind of thinking through that flexibility. So for families who choose to, if their child doesn't go to one of our member colleges, or they get a full scholarship, or what, they want to take out those funds. Like other 529 plans, they do have that flexibility to change the beneficiary. So, that is one option if they wanted to change to another family member. And it's pretty inclusive, the 529 rules, in terms of who they can change the beneficiary to. But let's say they just want to take the money out and they want to use it. They want to take the funds out. That would be considered a refund for our plan, and you can certainly take your money out. What you would get is going to be your contributions. So whatever you deposited into the plan over the entire time that you were saving, with it's a calculation that's a plus or minus 2%, either upside cap on returns or downside loss protection. And so we, as a plan, take all the contributions from our savers and invest it in a trust. And so in a year where the trust was returned, let's say 5%, if you were choosing to take a refund, so withdraw that money not using at a member school, you would get a plus 2% return within that plan year. Now, on the flip side, let's say the trust was down 5% in year 2, your fund would only lose 2%, or your contributions. Now, I can tell you historically for savers, if they're choosing to take their money out, in most years, based on the performance of the trust, they're hitting that upside cap. But there is that small plus or minus 2%. And when you open your account and you're saving, one of the things that you can see is what we call our FAFSA value. And so that gives you kind of a general idea of what your refund amount would be.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, the whole FAFSA process. A lot of the parents haven't really gone through it yet. It's a challenging process. It's really getting changed up. It was a lot of eye openers when I went through it the first time. I'm learning a lot more about it. But that's a really great benefit, right, to your plan, that there is that potential to get that 2% growth on it, whereas the public prepaids really don't have that. So for those of you listening in, I think what's really really neat about this plan and the other 529 saving plans is you don't have to commit to just one, right? There can be different strategies you can put in place. Like, for example, the tax rules regarding 529 savings plans have really been modified a lot over the last few years, starting back in 2017, wherein a new rule was passed that said you can use money out of a 529 savings account up to $10,000 a year, okay, out of that to pay for pre-college education. So for those families, that are really they enjoy the private route, that's the route they want to go, they can have that 529 savings, and that can be used for pre-college expenses. Now, the true value of having these 529s is that to have that money in there and to have it grow over a certain period of time, you don't just want to be putting the money in and taking it out, because then you really haven't gotten the benefit of the tax-free impact of that. Okay. And that's the benefit of all these 529s. And the rules, for those of you that if in a normal savings account, if you were to take that money out and not use it for college, okay, what's considered a qualified higher education expense, that happens, is that you would have a 10% penalty only on the growth, not the amount you put in, just on the growth, right? So that's a little bit how the rules work around that. And so another big rule change that came out of these 529 savings accounts is that potentially there's some funds left over. There's the ability to roll that money into a Roth IRA for your child. This is something that's really developing, really unique out there. So there's a lot of these, a lot of different options with these when you go to these 529s and you're choosing which ones to go to. It's really to go through, your particular situation. How much do you want to commit towards this? What are your beliefs on education, right? Do you believe more strongly in a private education because you went that way, or a public education, whatever it might be? But there's lots of different options there. So, Jonathan, when you're sitting down and you're talking with families, right, on this that are considering you guys as one piece of the puzzle, and how do they fit in? Kind of where do you see that you guys kind of fit in the best? Is there kind of an ideal client with a certain belief set that, if they feel a certain way, that CollegeWell really fits in well into their plan?
Yeah. So, and we survey our account owners, obviously, much like other 529s, and we can learn from them. But, when we're sitting down with families and we're talking through if they're considering it, I think first and foremost are those, and you mentioned it, is private college something that is important to the family, right? Maybe they went that path. They might be a legacy of one of our schools, or maybe not one of our schools, but they find the value in private higher education, and that's something that they deem important. And so certainly we have folks that that rings true. We do have a lot of folks save in the plan that are legacies or that are alum of one of our member institutions. And so I think that a lot of folks will give us a look if that was something they had a valuable college experience at one of the schools, and they are looking at that for their children as well. And then, I would also say that even for those families who aren't necessarily 100% committed to the private path, but they know it might be an option, we know from survey data that many of hold traditional 529 plans. They have both. They are treating this as the kind of their fixed income portion of their college savings portfolio. They're kind of hedging against, they're protecting against that tuition inflation. And so it's a thought that private could be the path. We're going to save a little bit in here, knowing that we have an out if we needed to, and that we don't go that way. I'm also going to save in a traditional plan, and potentially, depending on my risk tolerance, I can have a little more exposure there. And so, obviously within the rules of the 529 investment plan. So, I think it's those that have that affinity for private college, that you think it might be a potential path for the future for their students. And then also just are looking to diversify in general, knowing that this option is out there for them.
Yeah, it's an interesting diversification vehicle. And
Yeah.
Jonathan, for those that have existing funds and 529 savings accounts, I would guess it's okay. It's pretty easy for them to roll over into your plan. They just get their credited units for the date the monies roll into your plan.
Absolutely. Yep. So we accept rollovers from other traditional 529 plans. And that is a strategy that we see some families employ, especially as their children are getting closer to college. Let's say, later in middle school, even high school. And they're like, all right, there might be, we're kind of really, really thinking that private is on the mind. And it's something that you're not going to get as many years of locked in growth, certainly, but you could lock in for, based on current rates to go, 3, maybe 4 years down the road. So absolutely, we do accept rollovers from other plans.
And isn't there a requirement, Jonathan, remind me, that once we make a contribution into CollegeWell, the money has to remain there a certain number of years, right, before you can start distributing?
Yes. So one of the rules in our plan is that there is a 36-month hold period. So essentially, from the day that you open the account and make a contribution, from the day the first contribution is made, 36 months, the clock starts. 36 months is when you can use the funds. And so, yes, for I don't want to say super late stage, but if you have a senior in high school, right? If you're thinking about it that way, and they've committed to a school that's in our plan, you certainly could move some funds over, but you'd really only be prepaying for senior year of college based
Right.
on timing. Yeah.
Which you could use. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of flexibility, right? There's a lot of, that's what I love about these 529s. They're so cool. And when, you mentioned the beneficiaries could change, I have conversations with clients in some of these savings accounts, say, hey, listen, if your child doesn't use all this money, you can go to a grandchild and it could go on and stuff like that. So they're really cool, unique vehicles. And for those out there that are thinking about college savings, really one of these plans, one of these structures is really the way to go. I hope they would consider it. Now it all depends on their factual circumstances. But Jonathan, listen, this has been I hope this has been really helpful to everyone out there. I think you guys are a real unique option. You're another arrow in the quiver. Yep. Right. That's what we're out there. I don't know that any one, option, like when I talk with clients, should we put everything into 529s? I'm like, no, you should not. Right. There should be other things that you can do. Another planning technique out there is for parents that have their own Roth IRAs. You can use funds from your own Roth IRA to pay for a child's education, right? So there's lots of different strategies and things that go into this. But the key is, I think, for anyone out there listening, is that to start early, right? Whether it's a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there, it's the compound growth. If you get into CollegeWell, you're locking in that price, you're locking in those units, right? That's really the best way to get into those. With your prepaid of your state, it may be the case also, but for my example in Florida, that might not be the case because the price tripled, right? In 1 year, as if you waited or your kids came around later, and if you waited, it actually became cheaper to wait. But Jonathan, I really appreciate your time. We're gonna leave information on you, on CollegeWell out there, and for any of you out there listening to this episode, please reach out. Feedback. We would love your feedback. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like. If you have other questions, maybe leave it in some of the comments below, and we'll try to come in here and answer it for you. But we hope you're finding this really beneficial. And Jonathan, thanks a lot for your time, man.
Thank you, Steve, and good luck to everyone with your planning.